I've always been the quiet one in the family, the one who shows up with a smile, helps clean up after dinner, and slips a little money into someone's pocket when they think no one's looking. I don't say much, but I notice everything. So when my niece, Emma, called me one evening with that too sweet tone she always uses before delivering bad news, I already knew something was coming. "Hi, Aunt Rose," she chirped. "We're planning a little family trip next month, a beach weekend." "Oh, how wonderful," I said, my heart lifting a little. It had been years since we'd done something like that. Then came the pause, that deliberate, careful silence. But it's adults only this time. We just want it to be, relaxing. No stress. I blinked, holding the phone against my ear. Adults only. Emma's 35. I'm 68. I wasn't planning to bring toddlers in sand diapers. I asked softly. Adults only, meaning... She laughed. "Oh, Aunt Rose, you know what I mean. It's just that Mom and Dad want everyone to unwind without, the older generation there. You'd probably get bored anyway." Older generation. That stung. I swallowed hard and said, "I understand, dear. You go have fun." The next day, my sister, her mother Karen, called to soften the blow. She said things like, "Don't take it personally," and "You know how Emma can be." I told her not to worry. But as soon as I hung up, I sat down at my kitchen table and stared at the calendar. Adults only. They had no idea who booked their last family vacation, or how much I had quietly covered over the years. Every flight, every Airbnb, every rental car, all done under my name because Aunt Rose has the good credit. They'd never even noticed. I'd done it out of love, out of that old family instinct that says, you take care of them even when they forget to take care of you. But that night, something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry, not exactly. It was more like a slow, cold realization. I had been treated like a background character in their story for too long. So I smiled to myself, made a fresh cup of tea, and opened my laptop. I still had access to the family's travel group chat, the one they forgot I could see. Within seconds, I was scrolling through their plans. Emma and her husband, Mark. My sister Karen and her husband, Frank. My 2 other nieces, Rachel and Lily. All 6 of them giddy about their adults-only getaway to the coast. Flights booked. Airbnb reserved. Rental car confirmed. And all of it under my account name. The same card on file I'd used last year when we went to the mountains. They'd reused the booking links without even checking. I sat back, a quiet laugh bubbling up. "Oh, girls," I whispered to no one. "You really shouldn't have done that." For the next few weeks, I said nothing. Not a word. When my sister called to brag about her new swimsuit, I just smiled and asked if she'd packed sunscreen. But the day before their trip, one bright Thursday morning, my phone started lighting up. It began with a message from Emma. "Aunt Rose, random question. Do you still use the same card for your Amazon account?" Then, weird, my credit card's declining for the Airbnb payment. "You didn't change anything, did you?" Then another from my sister. "Rose, did you cancel something? Our flights aren't confirming. It says booking invalid." I didn't answer. Instead, I brewed another cup of tea, opened my bank app, and calmly scrolled to the section labeled linked accounts. Every charge they'd made, refunded. Every flight, canceled. The Airbnb, released back to the market. It was as easy as pressing a few buttons. By the time they realized what was happening, the group chat was in chaos. "Emma, what's going on?" Rachel, "Did someone hack us?" Karen, "Rose, please call me ASAP. Everything's messed up." I just smiled at the phone buzzing across the table. That was the thing about being underestimated your whole life. People forget you're the one holding the quiet power. I leaned back, looked out my window at the sunset, and whispered, "Adults only, huh? Let's see how the adults handle this." Because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about finally showing them that kindness doesn't mean weakness, and that the woman they left behind still knew how to stand tall. I woke up early the next morning to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. It was already 6:45 a.m., and the screen was lit up with message after message from Emma. "Aunt Rose, please pick up. The airline says the payment was declined. They're saying your name was on the booking, not mine. How's that even possible?" I smiled softly. I had expected confusion, but not this quickly. I made myself some coffee, the kind I like. Dark roast, no sugar. I sat down by the window, watching the sun break through the curtains. The phone buzzed again. This time it was my sister Karen. "Rose," she said the moment I picked up, her voice sharp. "What in the world did you do?" "Me?" I asked gently. "What do you mean?" She sighed dramatically. "Emma's saying you canceled everything. The Airbnb, the car, the flights. We're supposed to leave tonight." I pretended to think for a moment, stirring my coffee. "Oh dear," I said. "I didn't cancel anything. But if the bookings were under my account, maybe the system just..." Karen cut me off. "You knew they were under your name, didn't you?" I could hear the frustration in her voice. That familiar tone she used whenever she realized she needed me, but didn't want to admit it. "Karen," I said quietly, "I didn't realize you'd reused my account information from last year. You should have told me." There was silence. Then in a smaller voice, "Well, Emma just copied the old links. We didn't think it mattered." I let the silence linger long enough for it to sink in. Then I said, "I see. Well, these things happen. Maybe it's a sign." "A sign of what?" she snapped. "That not every trip is meant to happen." She didn't like that answer. I could tell by the sharp exhale that came through the receiver before she said, "You're being ridiculous. Can you just fix this, please? We'll pay you back." That last part almost made me laugh. They always said they'd pay me back. They never did. I looked at the little photo frame on my table, one from our last family vacation. Everyone smiling on the beach, holding cocktails. I remembered standing behind the camera, taking the picture, while they argued about who deserved the best room. "I'll see what I can do," I said finally. When I hung up, I didn't feel guilt. I felt calm and almost peaceful. It wasn't about punishing them. It was about balance, about letting them see the cracks they'd ignored for so long. I opened my laptop again. Their airline tickets were fully refunded. They'd get their money back eventually. The Airbnb was rebooked by another family within an hour of being released. Their fancy weekend getaway was gone. And then, for the first time in a long while, I opened my email and booked something for myself. A quiet little cabin 2 hours away, right by the lake. Nothing fancy, but perfect for someone who'd spent too many years taking care of everyone else. As I confirmed my reservation, another message came through. It was from Emma. "Aunt Rose, I think we owe you an apology." I stared at it for a moment. Then another followed. "I didn't realize the bookings were still on your card. I should have told you. We were just excited." That was the closest thing to accountability I'd ever heard from her. I typed back, "Don't worry about it, dear. Mistakes happen. Maybe next time, you'll remember to include everyone." She didn't respond after that. That evening, as they scrambled to rebook flights and find new accommodations, I packed a small overnight bag, just a few clothes, my journal, and the scarf my late husband had bought me years ago. Before leaving, I turned off my phone completely. No calls, no messages. By the time they realized they couldn't rebook anything at that price, I was already sitting by the lake, watching the water ripple under the moonlight. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the forgotten aunt. I felt like a woman who finally took back her peace. The next morning, I woke up to the faint sound of rain against the cabin roof. The air smelled of pine and wet soil, quiet, clean, and unbothered. I hadn't felt this peace in years. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, and listened to the world breathing. For the first time, no one needed me to solve their mess. Or so I thought. Around 8 a.m., my phone, which I had turned off the night before, started to buzz again the moment I powered it on. 3 missed calls, 7 messages, all from Karen. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Rose," she practically yelled, her voice echoing through the speaker. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Good morning to you too." "Don't be smug," she said. "We're at the airport and the airline says our tickets were refunded, to your card. Now the hotel's saying the reservation is gone too. What game are you playing?" I let out a quiet sigh. "Karen, you told me not to come. You said it was an adults-only trip." She groaned. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Rose, it was just a joke. You take everything so personally." There it was. The line I'd heard my entire life. The one people use when they've hurt you, but don't want to face it. "It's not about taking things personally," I said softly. It's about respect, she scoffed. Oh, don't start that again. I stayed silent. Sometimes silence is the sharpest reply. After a moment, she sighed heavily. Look, Emma's in tears. She feels terrible. She didn't mean it that way. I looked out at the rain sliding down the cabin windows. Karen, I've spent most of my life doing things for this family. I planned birthdays, cooked for holidays, covered hotel bills when people forgot their wallets. And all it ever got me was being called too sensitive. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something that surprised me. Rose, you don't know what Emma's been going through. Her tone shifted, softer, almost pleading. She's been under a lot of stress. Lost her job 3 months ago. Didn't want to tell anyone. The trip was her way of pretending everything was okay. She thought if she looked in control, people wouldn't see she was drowning. That stopped me. I didn't know that. Karen continued. And she was embarrassed. You've always been careful with money. And she's not. She thought you'd judge her. I sat back, feeling the weight of those words. I'd never meant to make anyone feel small, but I couldn't deny I had always been the one quietly holding everything together. Still, I remembered Emma's smirk when she said, adults only. There had been no guilt in her eyes then, just pride. I'm sorry she's struggling, I said carefully, but maybe she needs to understand that actions have consequences. Sometimes, losing control is how we learn. Karen didn't argue this time. She just sighed again. Well, we're stuck at the airport with no trip and no money. What do we do now? I could have said figure it out. I could have hung up and enjoyed the rest of my weekend in peace. But something inside me softened. Maybe it was the rain, or maybe it was the loneliness that creeps in after years of keeping your heart guarded. I'll call the airline, I said finally. Her tone shifted instantly. You will? Yes, I said, but not to fix everything, just to explain what happened. After the call ended, I sat quietly, thinking. I opened my laptop, logged into the airline portal, and checked the status again. The tickets were refundable, yes, but the refund hadn't been processed yet, meaning I could still choose to reinstate them. And that's when I noticed something, a note attached to the booking. Under special requests, it said, please arrange champagne and welcome banner for Emma's birthday celebration, paid in advance by Aunt Rose. I froze. They had used my card. Again. That was the moment my patience snapped. Not from anger, but from heartbreak. They hadn't just excluded me. They'd used my name, my credit, my kindness as their convenience. I stared at the screen for a long time before closing it. They needed to understand what they'd taken for granted. Not just my money, but my time, my care, my presence. So instead of calling the airline, I made one call, to Emma. When she picked up, her voice was trembling. Aunt Rose, I'm so sorry, I interrupted gently. Emma, I know everything. About the payments, about the champagne. Silence. Then she whispered, you weren't supposed to see that. I know, I said. But I did, and maybe it's time you see something too. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. You think I'm mad because you didn't invite me, but that's not it. I'm sad because I realize this family doesn't see me anymore. You see what I give, not who I am. She didn't answer at first. I could hear her sniffling. Then she said quietly, you're right. The honesty in her voice took me by surprise. I'm sorry, she said. I really am. We've been unfair to you. I stayed silent, letting her words settle. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is give people space to face their reflection. Finally, I said, thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. She asked if I could fix the tickets. I told her I'd think about it. When the call ended, I leaned back in my chair and smiled faintly. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new. Not revenge, not guilt, just understanding. The morning of their supposed departure, the rain had stopped. The sky was pale and soft, that color right before the sun decides whether to rise or hide. I packed my things, not out of guilt, but because I'd decided to drive back home early. As I loaded my bag into the car, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Karen. It was Emma. Hi, sweetheart, I said, trying to sound neutral. Her voice was trembling. Aunt Rose. We're at the airport again. I don't know what to do. Everyone's staring at me. Mom's furious. Dad's trying to fix it with his card, but... She sniffled. They won't let us board. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. There it was, the moment that always comes after the lesson begins. Emma, I said softly, remember when you said the trip was for adults only? I know, she whispered. I was awful. I shouldn't have said that. No, dear, I said gently. You just showed me something I needed to see. Who values me, and who values what I can do for them. There was silence on the other end. And then through shaky breaths she said, I want to fix this. Please, tell me what to do. I looked out at the wet pine trees glistening in the morning light. You start by saying thank you, and then you start showing it, not just to me, but to everyone who gives without asking. She didn't respond, but I could hear her crying. Not the kind of crying that demands forgiveness, the kind that understands it. After we hung up, I drove for a while just thinking. My whole life had been built around keeping peace, smoothing over rough edges, paying bills no one remembered, staying quiet to stay kind. But that morning, I realized something important. Kindness loses its meaning when it's only one-sided. When I reached home, I checked my laptop again. The airline still held the tickets on file. I stared at them for a long minute, then smiled. I rebooked their flights. Same times, same seats, same destination. But this time, they were under Emma's name and her credit card. I added one note to the reservation. Please provide complimentary champagne for the group, courtesy of the new card holder, Emma Harper. Then I hit confirm. It wasn't revenge. It was a transfer of responsibility, of awareness, of balance. That evening, as I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was a photo, all of them, at the resort, smiling. Emma's caption read, Family isn't who pays the bills. It's who stays, even when you don't deserve them. Love you, Aunt Rose. I stared at that picture for a long time, smiling through quiet tears. Maybe they were learning. Maybe I was too. A week later, when they came home, Emma stopped by unannounced. She looked different, less polished, more human. She handed me a small box. Inside was a seashell, painted with gold lettering. It said, For the woman who taught me how to grow up. I laughed softly. You didn't have to. I did, she said. You were right, Aunt Rose. Sometimes losing control is the only way to learn. She hesitated, then added, I also called the airline and paid you back. Every penny. I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, she wasn't that entitled young woman I used to babysit. She was someone learning humility, and in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Thank you, I said simply. That means more than you know. We spent the afternoon drinking tea, laughing about old times. And for once, it didn't feel like I was giving and she was taking. We were just two women, sharing time, sharing truth. Later that night, as I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I thought about everything that had happened. How pain, when handled quietly, can turn into power. How silence, when chosen with grace, can teach louder than anger ever could. I whispered into the dark, as if my late husband might hear me. You'd be proud? Henry. I finally learned how to stop fixing everyone, and just let them fix themselves. The wind rustled through the window, soft and approving. And that's how it ended. Not with drama, not with punishment, but with balance. The kind of justice that doesn't scream, but settles like peace after a storm.